Have you ever noticed that some verses in the King James Version of the Bible are completely missing in the New International Version? Today we're diving into 7 Bible verses that are in the King James Version but not in the New International Version, and exploring why they're not included. First, let's quickly understand why this happens. The King James Version was translated in 1611 using a Greek text called the Textus Receptus. Since then, older and more reliable manuscripts have been discovered, and modern translations like the New International Version rely on these sources. When verses appear in the King James Version but are missing in the New International Version, it's usually because those older manuscripts don't include them. Scholars believe these verses may have been added later by scribes, so they're omitted in the New International Version. With that in mind, let's explore 7 of these verses. Matthew 17 verse 21, "Howbeit this kind goeth not out but by prayer and fasting." This verse is missing in the New International Version. Why? The earliest Greek manuscripts don't include it, leading scholars to think it was added later to emphasize spiritual discipline. Matthew 18 verse 11, "For the Son of Man is come to save that which was lost." This sounds familiar, right? But it's not in the New International Version. The reason? The oldest manuscripts don't have it. It's believed this verse was added to harmonize with Luke 19 verse 10, which has a similar message. Mark 7 verse 16. "If any man have ears to hear, let him hear." This phrase is often used by Jesus, but in Mark chapter 7, it's missing in the NIV. Early manuscripts omit it, so modern translations do too, likely because it was inserted later. Mark 9 verse 44, "Where their worm dieth not, and the fire is not quenched." This verse is repeated in Mark chapter 9 verse 48, but in the NIV verse 44 is gone. Why? It's absent in older manuscripts, suggesting it was a later repetition by scribes. Mark 11 verse 26, "But if ye do not forgive, neither will your Father which is in heaven forgive your trespasses." Forgiveness is a key Christian value, but this verse is missing in the NIV. Again, early manuscripts don't have it, indicating it might have been added later to reinforce Jesus' teachings. Luke 23 verse 17, "For of necessity he must release one unto them at the feast." This verse was likely added to clarify the context of Pilate releasing a prisoner. Since older manuscripts don't include it, the NIV leaves it out. Acts 8 verse 37, "And Philip said, If thou believest with all thine heart, thou mayest. And he answered and said, I believe that Jesus Christ is the Son of God." This verse, where the Ethiopian eunuch makes a profession of faith, is powerful. But it's missing in the NIV because it doesn't appear in the earliest and most reliable manuscripts. It's thought to have been a later addition to emphasize the importance of confession before baptism. So, what's the takeaway? These verses are omitted in the NIV because modern translators rely on older, more reliable manuscripts that don't contain them. Scholars believe these verses were likely added by scribes over time to provide clarification or emphasis. This doesn't mean the KJV is wrong or the NIV is incomplete. Both translations have strengths, and knowing the history behind these differences can deepen our understanding of Scripture. If you found this video helpful, be sure to like, subscribe, and share it with others who might find it interesting.